Hi students, welcome to the last lesson by Alphonse Daudet. Alphonse Daudet was a French novelist and playwright and was a part of the French naturalism movement. He started his career as a school teacher but quickly got tired of the vocation. I wonder why he got so quickly tired. Were the children really notorious? I wonder. He gave up teaching and decided to go to Paris to become a journalist. Daudet has written some plays which made him popular in the literary circles. The last lesson is a first-person narrative whose speaker is a little boy named Franz. The story begins with Franz hurrying off to school. What a familiar image we have over here of children who rush to school, especially if they're getting late. And I guess Franz too is late for school. He's quite scared as the French teacher, Hamel, is supposed to question the students on the past participle, that is grammar class. Franz hasn't learned it yet and is tempted to bunk his class. With great effort, Franz resists the temptation and goes unwillingly to school. He sees a crowd gathered around the bulletin board, the medium through which all bad news reached Alsace. Lost battles, droughts, and the orders of the commanding officers. Franz slips into the class without attracting the attention of Hamel, the teacher. I'm sure all of you students, you can relate to this. Okay. Now over here, when you talk about the bulletin board, it was about lost battles, droughts, okay, and of course transfers and so on and so forth. So it was like what we call the bulletin board is something like the notice board. But your notice board is not really about bad news, so to say, except, of course, when your results are mentioned. And if you fail the examination, it kind of becomes a place of bad news. So anyways, the boy was late for school and he reached pretty late to school and he tried to slip into the class without the attention or notice of the teacher. We also try to do that very often in our classrooms, don't we? Franz notices that the teacher has put on a green coat, a frilled shirt, and his black silk cap usually worn on special occasions like award ceremonies and inspection. He notices that the residents of the village are also huddled up in the classroom, all seated with a solemn look on their faces. Now, this is very interesting. Especially if you see your teachers, you're pretty much interested in seeing how they dress. There are times when a teacher looks exceptionally good because he or she has been wearing something that is really not the regular stuff. So Franz notices that his teacher is actually really well dressed. So he wonders what it is. Could it be a celebration? But then when he sees the entire classroom filled with even the villagers, that too with elderly people, he realizes they all were looking very grave, very serious. That's the meaning of solemn. So when he sees people sitting down over there with that kind of grave look, he thinks that perhaps although the teacher is dressed well, but it seems that maybe there is bad news around the corner. Still clueless, Franz begins guessing the reason behind such an unusual day. And then Hamel drops the bombshell. He says, "My children, this is the last lesson I shall give you. The order has come from Berlin to teach only German in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine. The new master comes tomorrow. This is your last French lesson. I want you to be very attentive." Franz is shocked. It finally dawned on him that the bulletin on the town hall meant what the bulletin on the town hall meant. So you see, that was the reason why everybody was gathered together in the classroom, because it was supposed to be the last French lesson. Henceforth, from the next day, what would it be? German would be taught instead of French. Franz regrets at not having taken his French lessons seriously. This is his last lesson, and he doesn't even know how to write. So you see how it feels? Like all of us go through this kind of a phase when we take for granted everything that's there around us, till of course a bombshell is dropped. He also feels sad for M. Hamel, a man who had given 40 years of his service to the place and who was being told to leave the school forever. So he says, well, not just the subject, even the teacher, because one gets so used to having the teacher and one wants the teacher to be there forever and ever. But then that's how it is. There was this change and he had to face this change. M. Hamel begins the class and calls out to Franz to recite the rules of participle. The boy fumbles and is completely lost. The teacher does not scold Franz, but reveals the sad truth. Every day we have said to ourselves, bah, I have plenty of time. I'll learn it tomorrow. And now you see where we have come out? Ah, that's a great trouble with Alsace. She puts off learning till tomorrow. So the teacher doesn't scold him today. After all, it is his last lesson. But then he says, well, there is something more than just the boy not knowing what the rules of grammar are. He says all of us have this tendency. We kind of say that maybe we'll do this tomorrow. Procrastinate. That is the word. We try to postpone doing things. And he says, well, we have a lot of time. There's a whole life to learn French or learn any other language for that matter. What's the hurry? And then he says, well, we're all collectively responsible for this kind of an attitude where we postpone learning. M. Hamel realizes that all three, who, the children, the parents, and he himself are to be blamed for losing respect and regard for the mother tongue. So if at all we don't speak the mother tongue, he says no, there's no point in just blaming the children. After all, it is a collective responsibility of each and every one of us as a society, who, the parents, the teachers, and of course, the children themselves. He then goes on to describe the beauty of the French language, stating that it is the most beautiful, most logical language in the world, and that the people must always be able to guard the language and never forget it. So that's the message he has for his people. He says, well, you must understand, and all of us, I'm sure, will agree with M. Hamel when he says that each and everyone believes that the mother tongue is the most beautiful language, the most logical language, because it is in that language where you can speak your mind or speak from the heart. And he says that do not give up on learning the mother tongue, regardless of whichever language you speak. Then the clock strikes 12. Well, the last time we heard this probably was when you read Cinderella, right? So the clock strikes 12 and it is time for M. Hamel to say goodbye. He tries to say something, but is overwhelmed with emotions. He says, my friends, and then he kind of choked. He could not go on. He stops and starts scribbling on the blackboard with large letters. And what does he write over there? Vive la France, meaning goodbye, France. The last lesson is an intensively poignant story about what it meant to speak a certain language and how closely one's language is linked to one's identity. So what is it about the language? The language is your identity. That is how you understand yourself. That is how you understand your loved ones. That is how you understand people of your community. The story demonstrates how the linguistic chauvinism of one race can lead to the enslavement of another, and what we as individuals can do to overcome such a challenge. What does it mean? He says, well, because the Germans have imposed on this particular province of Alsace that they will have to now learn German and not French, it is a kind of enslavement. And he feels sorry that, well, nobody was able to protest and say no, because, of course, because of the war, this was the kind of a natural takeover of the Germans. The last lesson revolves around the language and its importance to the citizens of a country. So it's not just about France, but it is about any nation for that matter. That no matter where you are or wherever you go, it is important that you continue to speak your mother tongue, because it is about establishing your identity with your country. It is a duty of every citizen to safeguard the language of the country, as it is the identity of that country to which you belong. The story also reinforces the fact that we value something more when it is lost. Language gives us our identity, respect, and freedom. The best way to thoroughly know about a culture is to know the language. Language, or the mother tongue for that matter, helps us stay connected to our roots. If one has a firm grasp of the mother tongue, it is easier for him or her to master a new language. I'd like to repeat this again, my dear students. If one has a firm grasp of the mother tongue, it is easier for him or her to master a new language. And I 100% believe this, that if you can speak your mother tongue fluently, you will be able to master or speak any language for that matter. But if you fumble in your mother tongue, then you can be almost sure that you won't really be able to talk or speak any language fluently. Also, knowing your mother tongue is a matter of pride. One must not be ashamed of one's mother tongue. One must know how to speak the mother tongue very, very fluently. Learning in your mother tongue also is crucial in enhancing other skills such as critical thinking, skills to learn a second language, and literacy skills. What does language do? It gives you identity, respect, and of course, freedom. So as we come to the last of the chapter, I hope you have understood this lesson carefully, and I'm sure you'll be tempted to go back and read the lesson. Do read the lesson. Thank you. Take good care of yourself and stay safe.